Hello, welcome along. This is Good Morning Transfers. Just 5 days remain in this January window, and Ruben Amorim is closing in on his first Manchester United signing. Yeah, we've got the very latest on Patrick Dorgu's potential move. Plus, we'll also discuss 3 possible exits at Old Trafford as well. Also this hour, Chelsea may well do business in the coming days. Could they sign Mathys Tel from Bayern Munich? Mikel Arteta is yet to sign a striker, and with time running out, can they get a deal over the line? Could Aston Villa striker John Duran leave the club? We'll react to reports linking him with Al Nassr this hour. And Evan Ferguson has sparked interest from clubs in the Premier League and across Europe. So who could sign him? A very good morning to you at home. Good morning as well to Quaker Afari, to Dave Reed and to Statman Dave. You all right on this Wednesday morning?
Very good, yeah.
Not long to go, is there?
No.
Yeah, the clock is ticking. We're going to start with Manchester United, who, just mentioned it there, could be very busy up until the deadline on Monday, with incomings and with outgoings as well. Dave, let's start with an incoming that, I mean, it feels like is developing pretty quickly already today.
Yeah, Patrick Dorgu from Lecce to Manchester United. The latest from Sky in Italy this morning is that the player is going to be flying into Manchester tomorrow to complete this deal. All the formalities will be sorted then, including a medical. The deal is agreed, and he is set to become Ruben Amorim's first signing as Manchester United manager. The package, the total package we're hearing is close to £30 million. So it feels like this one is going to be done sooner rather than later. He'll be flying in tomorrow.
Done sooner rather than later. Feels like a real quality signing for United as well.
It's really exciting. I think this is a player that Manchester United need from a tactical perspective. It's been an issue for United. That left-hand side has been a real problem. But we aren't going to go into the stats now because we've got some stats later on in the show. So I won't
yes, you're going to
have to hold on.
Tease for you know? Stay with us, basically. Let's talk about potential outgoings then. Marcus Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho and Casemiro, all 3 of their futures sort of uncertain at the moment. Dave, let's start with Rashford. Reports that he and Ruben Amorim aren't actually even on speaking terms now. The reports in The Guardian, I think it was yesterday, saying that Amorim is only really speaking to him when he's actually kind of addressing the squad as a whole. How does this end then, come Monday?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that it's not unusual for managers not to have close relationships with players. You know, you hear that a lot of the time at different Premier League clubs and football clubs in general, you know, it's not like managers are sat round the lunch table with the players chatting about everything. So, and the fact is actually that Marcus Rashford is totally out of the first team picture. So you would have an expectation that contact and communication is minimal, if any, with the manager. But you do feel like the comments after the Fulham game were a bit of a line in the sand for Marcus Rashford and the manager. And this month didn't start out like the Jadon Sancho situation with Erik ten Hag, where there was a clear fallout between head coach and player. But the closer we're getting towards the deadline, it does feel like things are a bit frayed between the pair. I mean, essentially, he said he'd rather pretty much have a pensioner on the bench than Marcus Rashford. I mean, that's not great to hear, is it, from a player's point of view? But as we get closer to the deadline on Monday, something's going to have to switch, because if he leaves, that solves a bit of an issue and a problem for Manchester United. If he stays, which at this stage is the most likely scenario, there's going to have to be some form of reconciliation, you would think.
So to get him back into the squad for sure. On Garnacho then, Kwaku, this week we've heard that Napoli have sort of are set to resume talks with Manchester United. We know there's interest from Chelsea there as well. Will he end up staying? What do you think will happen with him before Monday?
Well, it's interesting looking at the timeline when it comes to Garnacho under Ruben Amorim. He was dropped for United's win over Man City on the 15th of December, along with Marcus Rashford, for tactical reasons. He's since been integrated or reintegrated into the squad, and he's playing decent football. He's a very, very good player. Last season, I think people forget, because he is a little bit inconsistent, he is still very young. As a teenager last season for Manchester United, he played significant minutes. He played 36 league games, started 30 of them, scored 7 goals, scored in the FA Cup final, scored an iconic goal against Everton away from home. He's a player that contributed massively for Manchester United last year. There's two things going on here. I think the first thing is Ruben Amorim's system. Does he fit into the system which requires wing-backs and requires those narrow 10s behind the striker? I don't think he quite fits in. He's a traditional winger. And secondly is PSR. He's a homegrown talent. If they do recoup £60 million for him, it represents a lot of money which they can then go and spend on other players that maybe suits Amorim's system a little bit more. But if you think about Garnacho in terms of what he's contributed at such a young age, it's easy to forget how good he has been for Manchester United. Granted, he hasn't played the same style or same level football this season for United, but in a world that PSR didn't exist, I don't think they'd be entertaining selling Garnacho. But as things currently stand, he's one of their only sellable assets, so wouldn't be surprised to see him make a move in this window.
Worth pointing out, Manchester United have got themselves into this position because of their own past mistakes in the transfer market, overpaying for players who haven't been good enough at Manchester United. So the reason that they're potentially having to move on a player with so much potential that could well turn out to be one of the best wingers in Europe, it's their own doing.
Onto a player who's maybe at this sort of other end of his career, really, in Casemiro. We've heard this week that Roma want to sign him on loan until the end of the season. Does that sort of make sense for you? Because I know he'd been linked with clubs in Saudi at the beginning of the window.
100%. I think with Serie A, it's a little bit slower. Casemiro's big problem in the Premier League has been the transition. It's been tackling dribblers has been a key thing in terms of statistics. It's dropped off a bit. His rate in the Premier League is around 50% win rate. His first season was 48, and that 51, 52 in the second season. If we look at Nemanja Matic, that's a great example. Another ageing midfielder, great on the ball, but struggled in the Premier League at the end of his career with tackling dribblers. His win rate was around 48%. That shot up to 58% when he moved to Serie A. In terms of Europe's top 5 leagues, it's the lowest league in terms of dribbles per game. So it's a situation that would suit Casemiro. It's a little bit of a slower league. He can use the experience. The system and setup will probably be a little bit better for him as well in terms of, a bit more defensive-minded as well, not Manchester United having to dominate all the time. So it works for me, and it would work for Manchester United.
As long as it works for you.
That's all we've got to care about.
How much is it to do with Amorim's system? Again, he plays 2 midfielders. It doesn't provide protection for an aging midfielder like Casemiro. Say there were 3 in midfield, do you reckon Casemiro's still a player that could do a job in the Premier League?
I don't think Amorim's ever going to go to that. And I think the requirements of those 2 8s or 2 6s, it's so box to box. They've got to be energetic. They've got to be able to jump up and drop down. Hence why Toby Collier's looks so good, because he provides energy, quality in the tackle, and that's something that Casemiro doesn't have quite now. He would suit a 3-man midfield, absolutely, sitting there, allowing his teammates to do the running. But I think right now for Manchester United, energy in that area is so crucial.
Yeah. Well, Manchester United, of course, will be travelling to Bucharest later. That is ahead of their Europa League clash with FC SB tomorrow night. And that is where we find Anton Tolui. Anton, great to see you. There's so much noise, isn't there, around transfers at the moment and players' futures. How much of a, I suppose, distraction could that be for some of these players that we're talking about?
I think it'll be positive and negatives for the players, Emma. Positive because that left wing back position, if you've just been saying, it's been a problem position ever since Amorim came to the club. They've had players filling in. Diego Dallo's spent the majority of the time there. Obviously, the club's made a short-term decision on Tyrell Malacia, so bringing in Patrick Dorgu and the fact that he's expected to be a Manchester United player by the time, I suppose, that Manchester United land back in Manchester after this game will be a bit of a relief for some players that have been filling in. It gives them a little bit of tactical security if he does go straight in to the starting 11. But as you were saying, it's around the players, the big name players. That's the kind of thing. But also, these players have been dealing with a lot of problems this season. An unhappy Old Trafford, the fan base that's unhappy about ticket prices and the direction of the club's going with various sort of financial decisions they're making, the stumbling league form, the pressure they're under right now, the transfer situation around Alejandro Garnacho, around Marcus Rashford, around Casemiro. I'm sure it was affecting the players individually. Ruben Amorim has been talking specifically about Garnacho, saying, look, he's trying really hard. He's trying really hard in training to show that he can fit into our system. He's trying really hard on the pitch, and you can see sometimes he's trying too hard and he just needs a bit of luck in front of goal. So there is pressure on that front. So yeah, I think the fact that these players are being linked with different clubs day in, day out, and they've still got, just under a week to find out what's going to happen, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any kind of resolution in the next day or two. It's probably having a little bit of effect, but the fact that they are seeing a little bit of green shoots now with a player coming in, and if they do manage to get Marcus Rashford and Casemiro off the wage bill, potentially that means they might be able to do a little bit more business and maybe try and get players that fit into this much fabled new system. Maybe a sense of relief if players are coming in.
Yeah, I guess they'll have to do that soon, though, won't they? Anton, a big game tomorrow. It feels like every game at the moment for United is big, but what is at stake?
It's a really interesting one, this, isn't it? Because Manchester United are guaranteed to sort of qualify from the league stage of the Europa League. However, obviously, the top 8 managed to go through to the sort of last 16 and they avoid the playoff round. Manchester United are currently in the top 8. A point will probably be enough. It doesn't necessarily guarantee them. A win will guarantee them into that. And the important thing is that Manchester United won't necessarily mind about playing an extra 2 games in terms of they expect to win those games and go through. They're the favourites to some bookmakers for this competition. But the fact of the matter is, Ruben Amorim quite simply wants more time on the training pitch with these players. He's talked about it in pretty much every single press conference. The schedule, the number of games they're playing, the fact they're playing twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week at the moment, means he's really struggled to imprint his vision on the team so far. So if he can have a couple of freer weeks in the build-up to their Europa League knockout stages, that is what they want. That's what they're playing for. But FCSB, that's a mouthful to say, isn't it? I've got to say that a lot over the next couple of days. They've got a lot to play for as well with this one. It'll be a sellout stadium here at the National Stadium. It's going to be an interesting one. They want to finish in the top 8 as well. They are formidable at home. It's going to be a hostile environment when Manchester United get here tomorrow night. Manchester United land here later this afternoon, and we will hear from the head coach, Ruben Amorim, at around 7 o'clock your time later.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Anton, brilliant stuff. Thank you for the insight, and we'll chat to you again soon. Right, let's get now to our transfer to keep an eye on in our one to watch, and that player today is Evan Ferguson. Dave, this is a really sort of intriguing situation.
He's a player we've been talking about for most of the window, and
Yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it?
Things might be developing as we head towards deadline day. The latest understanding is that Brighton will allow Evan Ferguson to leave, possibly permanently. All we've been talking about so far is a loan move, but it now seems that Brighton are open to allowing him to leave permanently. All depends on the fee that they're able to get for the player. And important to point out that as it stands, it feels like a loan is probably the most likely outcome for the player. Bayer Leverkusen in Germany are the club that are at the front of the queue at the moment to sign Ferguson, possibly on a permanent, possibly on a loan deal as well. Intriguingly, we're told that Brighton have already rejected an offer this month from a Premier League club, so there's obviously things going on in the background there. And important actually as well to mention around Leverkusen, lots of stories going on around Victor Boniface at Leverkusen moving to Saudi Arabia in a £50 million deal. It seems like a club-to-club agreement is there, and now they're just deciding whether to push forward with the player or whether to look at alternative targets. I think we're going to talk more about that later in the show. But if that does happen for Boniface, then Leverkusen do have a gap up front that they would need to fill.
All right, Evan Ferguson then our one to watch on this Wednesday morning. Right, let's talk a little bit about Chelsea now, who, look, could have a big say in this window. Looks like they might be active. Chelsea expected to resume talks after Mathys Tel made the decision that he wants to leave Bayern Munich. Kwaku, it sounds like it's not just Chelsea, but a number of clubs interested in him. Does Chelsea make sense?
He's a very talented youngster, and he's played the majority of his career at Bayern Munich out wide, but I see him long-term more as a man to play down the middle. He thrived last season under Thomas Tuchel, scored 7 goals, 5 assists, and only 6 starts in the Bundesliga. Was rewarded with a new contract in March that took him up to 2029. Unfortunately, with the change of manager, company coming in and replacing Tuchel, and Michael Olise arriving from Crystal Palace, he's a player that has struggled for game time this season, only started 2 league games. He's a player that needs to be playing matches. He's very, very talented. He's got all the ability in the world. If you look at Chelsea's wide options, though, Jadon Sancho, Pedro Neto, Tyreek George has just broken into the team. He's a youngster that's very, very exciting. Noni Madueke's scoring goals as of late. So it's not necessarily a position of need for Chelsea, but he'd definitely be a great addition. And if you look at the small sample size that we do have of Mathys Tel, he's got those finishing instincts. And as good as Nicholas Jackson has been this season, he lacks that decisiveness in the final third. And I think Tel as a long-term option down the middle for Chelsea would be very exciting. Whether the deal can get done before the end of the window remains to be seen, because he's a youngster that, like I said, signed a new contract. It's going to be a very expensive deal. But Chelsea are very opportunistic when it comes to transfers. And when they spot an opportunity, they do normally strike. So one to keep an eye on, and I think it's a very, very talented player.
When you're mentioning their options there, Chelsea's, I mean, you didn't mention Nkunku. Do you feel like there could be almost a domino effect?
He's a player that warrants minutes, right? He was very highly thought of when Chelsea signed him, struggled with injuries last year. This season, when given game time, he has scored goals, 13 goals in 28 appearances in all competitions. Granted, the majority of those goals have come in the Conference League. But he's a player, unfortunately for him, he occupies similar space on the pitch to Cole Palmer. And we know how good Cole Palmer is. He's not displacing him in Chelsea's first 11. And if you look at or you survey the options in the Premier League, and you look at a team like Manchester United, for example, who need a player to play behind the striker, he's going to be a very attractive option. Christopher Nkunku is a very, very good footballer. And like I say, he warrants minutes, but at Chelsea it's been a struggle. And where he's not viewed as an out-and-out striker, in this Maresca system, I struggle to see where he fits in.
I think that's the interesting side. When he was at Leipzig and he was playing his best football from a goal-scoring perspective, played pretty much in a narrow three with a three-at-the-back system, so there was players in close proximity that he could play off. His finishing was very, very good in that season. If you rewind a few years previous to that, he was one of the top assisters in Europe. So the quality is definitely there, but the problems have been injuries in recent years at Leipzig, then at Chelsea. He's got to play football, I think, at this time. 27 years old. I think we forget he's still reasonably young for a striker. Could be coming into his prime right now. Manchester United would make sense, but I think only for a loan move to see whether he can stay fit, to see whether he can get game time in the Premier League and put the ball in the back of net.
Just sticking with outgoings at Chelsea for a moment, João Felix and Axel Disasi, Dave, where are we at with those two? I think Villa have been interested in both of them. Yeah,
Villa interested in both of those players. Our understanding is that talks have been held about a deal for both of those players. The interesting thing is that one of those would have to be a permanent if Villa were going to do it, because you can't loan two players in the Premier League from the same club. So the initial thought was that Disasi might be a loan, and now it feels like maybe there's something to be done around João Felix, and there's other clubs that have been looking at him. AC Milan have been looking at João Felix in this transfer window. So from Chelsea's point of view, what we've been told consistently throughout the window is that they don't want to sell anyone in this transfer window. So it would take would take a switch of position, I think, from Chelsea in order to do a deal. But the fact is that, like Nkunku, João Felix isn't getting the minutes that he would desire either. And they've almost had two teams, Conference League and Premier League. And let's face it, those players in the Conference League team are too good for the Conference League team. So this problem was always coming down the track for Chelsea in terms of they've got a big squad, significant size squad, and the players aren't getting the minutes that they would want in the Premier League and in the first team. Maybe it would be different if Chelsea were already in the Champions League and there was some rotation there. But the fact that they're not means that this problem was always coming for them. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens in the final couple of days for João Felix and Axel Disasi.
Could be busy. Could be busy at Chelsea. Right, just a quick update to bring you, because we spoke about Manchester United a moment ago, but Patrick Dorgu and his move to Old Trafford is edging ever closer. We're told now that the left-back is flying to Manchester today ahead of completing that move from Lecce. So any more updates, we will, of course, bring you them here on Sky Sports News, but loads still to come. We're going to bring you the transfer roundup, plus we'll be discussing all things Arsenal. Will they sign a striker? Welcome back. Time now for our transfer update. And Manchester United have agreed a deal worth £29.4 million to sign Lecce defender Patrick Dorgu. He is flying to Manchester today ahead of completing that move. Chelsea target Matis Tel has decided he wants to leave Bayern Munich in this transfer window. That is according to Sky in Germany. Brighton are now open to permanent offers for their striker Evan Ferguson in this transfer window. Bayer Leverkusen are leading the chase to sign him. That is amid interest from a number of Premier League clubs. Aston Villa's talks for Villarreal's defender Juan Foyth are not currently progressing. Wolves face competition from Stade Rennais for Kevin Danso. Lens won a £25 million package. Paul Pogba's representatives have been approached by a number of clubs in Europe, in the Premier League, in the MLS and in Saudi Arabia. And Middlesbrough have agreed a deal to take goalkeeper Mark Travers on loan from Bournemouth.
5 days to go. Time is running out for Arsenal to try and sign that elusive striker this month. Let's hear from the Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta on his hopes of bringing in players before the deadline.
Well, there are situations open, and I always say the same, that if we can improve the squad with players that can impact us for now, for the future, we will try to do that if it's the best thing for the club, and I stand on that.
Arteta has previously said that it is clear they need reinforcements, and ideally they would get a striker in this window. We talked a little bit earlier about Evan Ferguson in the show. If he is available, potentially on a permanent we're talking about now, is he someone that Arsenal should be interested in?
Yeah, people forget how young Evan Ferguson still is. 20 years old. Of course, this season he struggled in terms of form and injuries, but last season as a teenager he scored 6 Premier League goals. We all remember that memorable hat-trick against Newcastle. He's a player that, because he is so young and he does use his physicality, that does take time for strikers in that mould. But if you put that into context, like I say, he's 20 years old. Victor Gyökeres, who's now the hottest property in Europe, when he was 21 years old, he was coming off the bench for a Swansea side that were in the Championship, of course, ironically, on loan from Brighton. So Evan Ferguson's a player that does fit the mould in terms of an out-and-out number 9, but Arsenal, more than any other team in the Premier League, are in win-now mode. And so for a player that is young, that needs time to develop, if he doesn't hit the ground running, if Arsenal were to bring him in, then I don't think it would be the best for his personal development.
I think when you're looking at Ferguson, you mentioned that the goals as a teenager. If you go back to the 22-23 season, he was a top goal-scoring teenager in the Premier League. But that's quite a while ago, and I suppose the development for his next step has got to be that game time. But we know that Arteta's worked well with some really good attackers. I think the effect of Raheem Sterling when he was at Manchester City as an assistant manager. Then you think, obviously, Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, even Kai Havertz. As much as there's headers that he misses, especially in recent weeks, he's developed as a footballer. So for Ferguson, it would be a good opportunity to work with one of the best coaches in the Premier League.
What about Arsenal previous January windows? Sometimes they spend, sometimes they don't. What, can we read anything into that?
I think, obviously, Aubameyang's the one that jumps out to everyone, but that was a pre-Arteta signing. In a sense, you're thinking Trossard and Jorginho are the two players that were bought for a cut price that really affected the season. Trossard was directly involved in over a goal a game towards the end of the season from that January move. And Jorginho played a lot of football. It was 14 out of the 19 games. Those were good signings in a sense of Trossard kind of fell out with Brighton. The move was reasonably cheap, whereas Jorginho's contract was expiring. There doesn't appear to be any moves that Arsenal could make right now. Someone we spoke about last week would be Jonathan David. But it actually makes more sense now for Arsenal, maybe if they wanted to get someone like Jonathan David, sign him on a free transfer in the summer. So that's the position that Arsenal in right now. Of course, Mamouche would have been the perfect one. We saw at the weekend his impact from deep, his ability to attack the space. That's the perfect guy for them in terms of Kai Havertz, the partnership. He went to Manchester City. As much as Arsenal fans don't want to hear this, I think it's the summer when they need to get a centre forward.
You look at Arteta's significant signings, though, and you talk about the window 2 seasons ago in terms of Jorginho and Trossard, Premier League proven talent. They didn't need time to settle into this Arsenal squad. Look at other signings, maybe not in January, but a David Raya, a Declan Rice, Premier League proven. Arsenal will bring in players to help them win the league this season. So if you are looking abroad, there is that settling in period with foreign players, so they have to take that into consideration when bringing in players this window.
And it's not like Arsenal have been totally inactive in this window either. They have been looking at signings, not potentially for right now, but potentially for a few years' time. Could be one in, one out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at what Arsenal need to do in the long term, it's getting that right guy. And obviously, we've spoken about Benjamin Šeško. You mentioned Victor Gyökeres. They're the guys that will elevate Arsenal. They're not available in January. So when you're looking at players coming in, coming out, of course, Heaven has moved to Manchester United. A young defender, a player that's got great ability on the ball, got quite a nice language style, good at breaking lines with passes, switching the play. In terms of the statistics, obviously, that's the type of thing I like to look into. Around 90% pass accuracy at youth football level, but also when 67% of his defensive duels. That is a good number. You're looking in the Premier League, that would probably put him in the top sort of, 10% of players. Of course, that's a youth level, so you'd have to apply that to the Premier League. But there's a lot of raw things that I like about that for Manchester United. Of course, Arsenal have lost a player, so maybe they need to go back into the market.
OK, we'll see how we go. There's still not long to go now, is there, until that Monday deadline?
No, there isn't. Thanks, boys. Right, a reminder, if you are just joining us, Patrick Dorgu is flying into Manchester today ahead of that £29.4 million move from Lecce. He will, of course, be Ruben Amorim's first signing as United boss. Right, still to come, we're going to hear from the Celtic boss, Brendan Rodgers, on re-signing Kieran Tierney. Plus, will Manchester City bring in a midfielder before Monday's deadline?
Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Patrick Dorgu is almost a Manchester United player. He is flying to the UK right now. So let's take a look at Patrick Dorgu. Let's talk about him as a player and a recent performance against Inter Milan, and then we're going to dive into which positions he's played for Lecce. So first and foremost, let's focus on that Inter Milan game at the weekend. Yes, Lecce did lose 4-0, but for me, Patrick Dorgu was one of the standout players on the pitch. In terms of profile, I'd describe him as a dribbling wing-back, a player that can drive inside, outside, that's very good with his close control, but also has got a good ability about himself in terms of holding players off and using his strength and acceleration. But very much in the 4-3-3 from left full-back against Inter. Let's dive into his statistics. Oh, nearly got that one wrong. In the game. So first and foremost, one of the things I like about Patrick Dorgu, not only is he good in the dribble, he's very comfortable in possession. He's good at popping those balls into midfield and progressing the football. So the first thing I want to highlight, the 93% pass accuracy. Not only did he have a really high rate there, but he completed the most progressive passes on the pitch of any player. So not only is he keeping the ball, he's making things happen. But the big thing for this game, what I like about his performance, was his ability in the duel. Very, very aggressive, quick to the ball, quick to the tackle. And we can see that not only in his duels, first on the pitch with 8, but also his tackles won with 5. A good ability to dive in, to tackle on his left foot with slide tackles, and that aggression is good. Moving on to the key part of the game, which I think will really impact Manchester United, that is the carrying. Progressive carries in the game, 6th, the most of any player on the pitch. This is an area that Manchester United have really struggled. We can all remember those clips in our minds of Manchester United bouncing the ball around the back 5 and not going forward. Dorgu will change that with his carrying. Into the final third, of course, a really important part of a wing-back's game is creating chances, crossing, and of course getting shots away. Again, Dorgu ranking really well for those metrics. In fact, Dorgu ranks in the top 4% of fullbacks in Europe's top 5 leagues for goals scored. Another key part of his game that will add goals to Man United's attack. And finally, interceptions. His ability to read is pretty decent, but an area that he could still improve. And let's move on to the positions that he's played this season. One of the big things with Patrick Dorgu that I like is he's played basically everywhere. We're talking left back, right back. We're talking into central midfield, attacking midfield, striker, and on both wings. Of course, the key position for Manchester United and Lecce this season has been at left back. These, of course, are the minutes by position for both of his seasons playing for Lecce's first team. In terms of that, what I like about that is you think Manchester United's system and setup. Yes, it's a back 5, but Dorgu could play on both wings, on both full-back positions, and a position that I believe he could play as well is that outside centre-back role. As I mentioned, very comfortable in possession at carrying out and passing into midfield. If United want to go for the jugular and want to attack, you could see someone like Alejandro Garnacho playing left wing-back with Dorgu as that wide centre-back in a back 3. I love his profile. I think he's a player of massive, massive talent and still just 20 years old. But that's enough about Patrick Dorgu. Back to you guys in the studio.
You are actually in the studio, by the way. You're literally just over there. Dave, thank you. Right, Brendan Rodgers has confirmed that Kieran Tierney will rejoin Celtic in the summer. The club are also, though, trying to sign him on loan now for the remainder of the season. Tierney is, of course, a Celtic Academy graduate and was with them until he joined Arsenal in 2019.
He's still, at this moment, still an Arsenal player. So I think we're agreed that that will definitely take place in the summer. If we can do it beforehand, then great. I don't want to speak too much on it, with the greatest respect, because he's not a Celtic player here now with us. But if we were able to do it, of course, we would like to do that. But that's out of our control at this moment in time.
Right, time now to take a quick look at some of the stories making the back pages today. We're going to start with The Athletic, who are saying this morning that Al Nassr are set to decide between a deal for Victor Boniface or John Duran. Dave, I'll come to you for this, because Villa fans will certainly be hoping it is not John Duran that they're coming for.
Yeah, definitely not. And Villa's position is they don't want to sell John Duran. There is just almost seems to be constant noise around the player, which feels like it almost destabilises his position at Aston Villa.
Because he's on the bench a lot of the time, though, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and the fact is that he's reaching a level now where he doesn't want to be, and rightly so, a rotation option. And when Ollie Watkins is starting ahead of you, that means there's always going to be a question about why isn't John Duran starting ahead of Ollie Watkins, or why can't you play both of them together? And that has been a consistent theme when Unai Emery has spoken to the media. So that is another thing that is kind of added on top of the cake, if you like, with John Duran when it comes to potential sales. But Villa don't want to sell him. Chelsea were interested in him last summer. Villa have already had an offer from West Ham in this transfer window. And now the Saudi links are returning as we head towards deadline day. Could be one to watch. Villa's position is they don't want to sell. But if a stupid offer comes in, every player's available.
Right, let's move on to the Daily Telegraph, who are saying today that Al Hilal are emerging as the most likely destination for Mo Salah should he decide to leave Liverpool. Al Hilal, of course, looking for a high-profile signing after they lost Neymar. What do you make of that?
The links with Mo Salah in Saudi Arabia are never going to go away. He's the most high-profile Muslim footballer in the world, and he's still in his prime, which is crazy to say for a player that's been at the highest level for a long, long time. In his 30s, leads the Premier League in goals with 19, leads the Premier League in assists. He's probably having the season of his career this season, and he's a player that will have so many options come the summer. Nothing's going to happen in January. Liverpool are top of the Premier League, they're top of the Champions League group as well. They could potentially win 4 trophies this season. But with Al Hilal cancelling the contract with Neymar, who's now returning to Santos, they've got room for a superstar. Mo Salah is certainly a superstar. So it's definitely one to watch for the summer, but for January, this move's not happening.
He is a superstar, isn't he? And he's still delivering. Quake, you touched on it there in terms of stats.
That is ridiculous. I think this could be his best ever season. He's already been directly involved in 39 goals in all competitions. If he continues this rate, it'll be his best ever. And that's a player that's continually evolving. And I think this season we're seeing the creativity explode, we're seeing the goals explode. And when you look at his numbers, he is the perfect player in the Premier League. Liverpool would be crazy to not offer him a new contract right now just because of the level that he's playing at.
Right, let's talk Manchester City now then, who have, of course, they've been busy, haven't they? Made 3 signings this month. They've brought in centre-backs Abdul Kadir Kusanov and Vita Hayes, as well as forward Omar Mamouche. But are they looking to bring in a midfielder to fill the void of Rodri? They have, of course, been without the Ballon d'Or winner since September.
Every position is important if you perform well, and of course we have replaced this time already with the 2 players. They are not proper holding midfielders for many reasons, but we'll see in the future what you have to do.
Yeah, we will see. Not long to go, though, is there? They've had a real busy month so far. We've spoken about it so much on these transfer shows, but they could still sign another maybe defensive midfielder and another fullback before that deadline. We know there's interest in Cambiasso, in Edison as well from Atalanta, and Douglas Luiz. Talk to us a bit more about Cambiasso. Why are they so interested in signing him?
If you want to get someone that's very similar to Joao Cancelo, this is the guy. He's so comfortable on both feet. He's supposed to be right-footed, but he plays with his left foot so well. He's played inverted on both sides, played on the wide area on both sides. I think if you look at Manchester City's shape against Chelsea this weekend, both fullbacks were super high. The wingers were inside. It was almost like Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool in that respect. Cambiasso would be perfect to play either left-back or right-back in that system. You know, Josko Gvardiol was directly involved in 3 shots in the game. His expected goals was over 1. He is a defender. He probably should have scored twice. Obviously, he grabbed himself 1 goal. So having Cambiasso to be that guy in the final third to play a similar role as Joao Cancelo for Pep Guardiola, it gives them that flexibility, and the need for a midfielder is far reduced there. I do like Edison, though. I think he's going to be a Premier League player at some times. You know, watching him this week against Como, the strength, the ability to win the ball back. He's Brazilian, he's got the feet, the footwork, but he's very much like an English box-to-box midfielder, can do all those kind of things that you want a player like that to do. He'll be in the Premier League, maybe for Man City, maybe for not, but I think Cambiasso should be their number 1 in January, if not the summer.
Right.
Cambiasso is an exciting one, just really quickly, because Man City have tended, or Pep Guardiola has tended to bring in defenders that traditionally are viewed as centre-backs and then play them out wide. We remember Josko Gvardiol at the World Cup. He was one of the best centre-backs at the World Cup, and he came to Man City and all of a sudden this attacking force. And Kyle Walker's obviously departed the club. Man City at their best, I think, have full-backs that are traditional full-backs that get forward and also can invert. And I think Cambiasso has shown that he's a player that can definitely add to that arsenal.
Just going to break away from Manchester City for just a moment, and actually comes off the back of the story that we were just talking a moment about involving John Duran. It is now our understanding that Al Nassr do want to sign either Duran or Victor Boniface. The Saudi Arabian club have held talks over both strikers, but will only sign one of them, with a decision expected soon. Now, this is the important part as well. Sky Germany are reporting that Al Nassr have made a £58.6 million offer to Aston Villa for John Duran. What do you make of that? Because you were saying it might come down to the fact it's about money and about the fee.
I think if they've made that level of offer, I think it's going to get left on 2 blue ticks. Because that's nowhere near. That's nowhere near what that wouldn't even get Villa to the table, let alone to the phone. So I think that Al Nassr would have to come back with a much larger offer if Villa were to do business. As I said a moment ago, really, John Duran's reaching a level where he's no longer a rotation option in the Premier League. He's a bona fide starter, and you know he started the season like running hot on his goals, on his XG, and everything. Now he has obviously cooled down a little bit since then, and the suspension following the red card against Newcastle didn't help. But he is a player who a lot of the top clubs are looking at because his highlights reel is unbelievable. Like your eyes pop when you see his highlights reel. Now, is his all-round game match up to that? No, it probably doesn't. He needs work. He needs time to fix that. Now, Unai Emery is probably one of the best coaches in the world in order to help him develop his all-round game. You see what he's done with Ollie Watkins already in his all-round game. And, you know, I just... If Villa's position, again, is they don't want to sell John Duran, so it would have to be a larger offer than that.
Yeah, like Dave keeps saying, Villa's sort of stance is that they don't want to sell him, but they are braced for more big offers. We know that West Ham had a bid turned down earlier this month. What's your stance on the sort of player side of things, how he'll be feeling? Well, from his game time, doesn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And from his point of view, he feels ready, and I think there has been a period of time where Villa have had to temper his expectation because he's one of those players who wants everything and he wants everything right now. And you just have to maybe temper that a little bit given his age and given the development that's needed within his game. Now, I think he would admit himself that he perhaps hasn't done every single thing that was asked of him in training last season under Unai Emery. I think he left a little bit to be desired from what we hear anyway in training sessions. Unai Emery won't stand for that. And then in the summer, there was lots of issues and talks around, is he going to leave? Is he going to stay? There was the West Ham transfer. There was the Chelsea offer. He did an interview with Columbia Media where he talked about, I want to play for one of the bigger teams. He's had opportunities where he hasn't quite hit the right note with the club, with Villa fans. But Villa have kept going with him. They've given him an opportunity to say, OK, you're here, show us what you can do. The start of this season, his all-round game has been much better. From what we hear, he's worked harder than ever before in training, and his game has improved, and it's bared fruit, really, in the goals that he scored in the Premier League. From his point of view, he wants to be number one.
He does want to be number one, and the way that young players develop is playing consistently week in, week out. And Unai Emery showed us that there's a reluctance to play both Duran and Watkins together, and that could prove problematic because Watkins, I believe, is the clear number one option in that position. And if Duran's not getting regular football, then it's understandable, like you mentioned, he's a player that wants it all and wants it right now. If there's options on the table to go and play regular football and develop as a player, then I can understand why the players would want to take that option.
Is it reluctance, or is it the fact that it sort of just doesn't work when they have started together?
Well, they've not started together very often,
no.
You must say. There was a moment in the game against Monaco in the Champions League where Duran came off the bench, played alongside Ollie Watkins, and the balance was all off. Now, Emery took the responsibility himself on that and said he didn't quite get the communication right to the players as to what he was asking. Some of the players didn't follow the plan that was laid out for them in the pre-match meeting. So there has been occasions where they've both played together and it hasn't worked. But Emery has said consistently that they have practiced with them in training, with both of them playing together, and he has found a formula. Now, he hasn't felt the confidence yet to do that on a consistent basis. So it's a nice problem to have for Villa. They've got two top strikers who want to play. But given the noise around John Duran, it almost, as I said earlier, it kind of destabilises Villa a little bit, just because every week we're talking about John Duran's future.
I feel like that noise might continue a little longer. Right, well, what a morning of transfer news. Sky Germany reporting a bid has gone in for Aston Villa's John Duran, and Patrick Dorgu's flying to Manchester right now, today, ahead of a move to United. Right, coming up next, with just 5 days to go until deadline day, will Tottenham make any signings? Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. It is that time of the day where we take you back in time. On this Wednesday, we are taking you back to 2021. West Ham signed Jesse Lingard from Manchester United on loan. Had played just 3 times for United that season, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was managing United at the time, said he wanted the 28-year-old to return revitalised. Well, he certainly impressed, didn't he, on that loan? 9 goals, 5 assists in 16 matches, and he even fought his way back into Gareth Southgate's England setup as a result as well. So just shows you what a loan move can do. Right, a little reminder of the breaking news that we brought you in the last 5 minutes. According to Sky Germany, Al Nassr have made a £58.6 million bid to Aston Villa for their striker John Duran. Villa do not want to sell him, but are braced for more big offers. West Ham, of course, had a bid turned down earlier this month for the striker. Al Nassr will make a decision on whether to sign him or Bayer Leverkusen's Victor Boniface soon. Right, let's stick with Aston Villa for the time being then. Talks for Villarreal defender Juan Foyth not currently progressing. Villa have other defensive options such as Axel Disasi at Chelsea and Loic Bardet at Sevilla in mind. Dave, there is a real need, though. I think when watching Villa on the weekend, there's a real need for defensive reinforcements.
Yeah, they have. They are a little bit short at the moment. The Tyrone Mings injury, there was almost a collective intake of breath when he went down and eventually was forced off as well. You could see how upset he was when he came off, and there was obviously the fear there within the ground that it was going to be another serious one for him. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that serious, and maybe he'll be back for next week from Aston Villa's point of view. But on that occasion against West Ham at the weekend, Luca Digne, who started the game at left-back, moved inside to play centre-back, and they've obviously lost Diego Carlos. Diego Carlos wanted to leave Aston Villa, and Villa facilitated that for him because he didn't want to stay at Villa. They've obviously lost Pau Torres. He's going to be out for at least another month. So right now, Ezri Konsa is kind of last man standing for Villa at centre-back. And also, rewind to the start of this window, Villa were already looking for a centre-back, and they've lost another one. Yeah. So they were looking for that player that can play centre-back, right-back, hence why they're looking at Axel Disasi and Loic Bardet as well. So could be 1, could be 2 defenders for Villa.
Well, mentioning the names there, who makes the most sense?
Well, from Villa's point of view, Disasi might be someone that they can get in on a loan, which might be a slightly financially better deal than signing a player permanently. We know Villa do have a little bit of wriggle room and money to spend in this window, given they were ready to make an offer around about 20 million we hear for Loic Bardet. So there is a little bit of money there, but Disasi might make a little bit more financial sense for them.
Right, we don't have too much time left on the show, but you have done a deep dive into why Spurs need a striker. Do a shallow dive for us, and we'll come back to it.
We'll do a quick one. A real quick one.
Well, don't be too quick, though.
I think that when you're looking at Spurs' forward line, they've scored a lot of goals, but it's been very much spread. They haven't been able to rely on one guy. They haven't had a Harry Kane, a Heung-min Son that's been so effective in front of goal. Obviously, Solanke's was the big signing over the summer, 65 million, 7 goals so far in this season, but he's underperforming his expected goals. So that's at 8.5, he scored 7 goals. So the chances he's getting, he's not putting them away at a clinical level. I think we've got at the start of the season, Brennan Johnson was in great form from the right wing. Heung-min Son, of course, is Heung-min Son, always above his expected goals, 5 expected goals, 6 goals scored. But in terms of Kulusevski, who's had a great season from midfield or from the right, or even times playing as that 9, and obviously Richarlison's coming back. At the moment, it feels like Spurs need maybe one more body, someone that can maybe be a little bit more consistent in front of goal. And we're looking at conversion rates, and we're looking at the average distance to the goal as well. Just someone that's going to put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, I suppose they have got goals from midfield, haven't they? Which isn't on here.
They do for sure. James Maddison is their top scorer, but again, he's not the first name on the team sheet this season. He's in and out of the side, but really, really effective. And I think building Spurs out as a squad, the big thing is defenders for me. Okay. They've got to sign defenders, but strikers as well would help them.
We'll come back to that deep dive. Right, a little reminder for you. Good Morning Transfers is back at the same time tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.